Welcome to the BizNews Edge. It is Thursday, the 2nd of July, 2026. I'm Alec Hogg. There's a theme running through today's show, and it's this. What happens when the people meant to be listening stop? A patient capitalist gets rewarded for playing a long game no one wanted to believe in. No one listened. A political party posts its best numbers in years and then detonates a credibility bomb in the same week. Business finally walks away from a state institution after 6 years of being ignored. And then a KwaZulu-Natal farmer tells us what it actually costs in real money and real animals when government stops listening to the people on the ground. Different stories, same lesson. Let's get into it. Johan Rupert has just pulled off the cleanest exit in Reinet's history. Reinet, a listed company on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange that always seems to be trading well below its net asset value. Well, the annual report that came out this morning confirms that both of the crown jewels, British American Tobacco and Pension Insurance Corporation, are gone, fully gone. And here's the number that matters most from that report for the year to end March. The Pension Corp sale alone handed Reinet more than 3 times what it invested on a bet placed 14 years ago. That's patient capital vindicated. Rupert is now sitting on a cash pile so big that it makes up the overwhelming bulk of what you'll pay for when you buy the shares on the market today. Think 100 billion rand. That's billion with a B. Something around 85 to 90% of the share price. And there are quite a few other assets in there as well. From Rupert's perspective, this isn't retreat, it's reload. And shareholders aren't being made to wait, well, not indefinitely either. The board has just lifted the dividend by nearly 18%, even as the asset value dipped on currency noise. My view, Rupert's cashed up, and boy, is he dangerous. The question now isn't what he sold, it's what he buys next with that 100 billion rand cash pile. Gareth van Onselen of Victory Research is our best analyst on polling data here in South Africa. He's proved himself time and again. And his newest initiative, which is called By-Election Track, has now closed the book on the 2021 cycle. This is because all of the by-elections, more than 400 of them, are now over until the big election comes on the 4th of November. By-elections, if you didn't know, are when a ward councillor who is voted in decides to either leave the party or to exit politics or sadly dies, and then they need to get someone to replace them. That's called a by-election. Well, for the first time, Van Onselen's numbers show that the DA is now out-polling the ANC nationally in local ward by-elections. Couldn't come at a better time for them, looking at the big election coming just around the corner in November. The ANC is stuck at an all-time low. The DA is pulling clear and getting stronger. And smaller party watchers take note. The Patriotic Alliance has quietly climbed past the EFF. Its support trending sharply higher right through this last 5-year cycle. But here's the catch. That DA number was measured before this week's own goals. Its immediate past leader, John Steenhuisen, has accused his predecessor by 1, Tony Leon's Resolve Communications, by 2, Resolve Communications, of buying privileged access to DA ministers on behalf of private clients, even claiming this is actually what cost him the agriculture portfolio. Tony Leon, essentially the founder of the modern DA, hit back hard, called it baseless. But Steenhuisen's allegations opened the door for the DA and the Leon's own enemies to go crazy after them. The ANC and Action SA are both demanding investigations, not just into the DA, but into Tony Leon's company. Well, my view is that the DA has just posted its best by-election numbers of the cycle, and then it detonated a credibility bomb in the same week. Those numbers won't be tested again until after November's local government elections. Are voters going to be swayed by the information that's coming out? Well, whether Steenhuisen's claims stick or not, the DA now has just 5 months to make sure that it can kill the narrative of being captured by its own founder, and that's not the story that South Africans have in their heads when we next go to the polls. Six years of patience gone. Business Unity South Africa has walked out of the UIF structures at Nedlac, pulling its people off the funds board entirely. And this isn't a snub, it's a verdict. Business Unity South Africa says that the unemployment insurance fund is dysfunctional. Boy, don't we just know that. It talks about backlogs stretching beyond 12 months, board meetings sprung on members with no notice, and quorums missed again and again. And now the sharpest line in the statement. Busa wants the Minister of Employment and Labour to place the UIF under administration and to have a forensic probe into every rand that it's spent. Remember, this is workers' and employers' money. We contributed to it here at BizNews, and I'm sure if you've got anything to do with a company, you do too. Contributions are meant for people who lose their jobs or take maternity leave or fall ill. Busa's message is stop redirecting this money into programs that dodge the fund's actual mandate. I guess you might also say the message is how much corruption is going on there. We need a forensic audit. Well, my view is that when business quits the table after 6 years of trying, that's not politics, that's exhaustion. And we wish the new chief executive, Kulikane Mate, the very best of luck in seeing whether he can now get the fund fixed in a different way. And so we come to the story that ties all of this together. Back in January, a KwaZulu-Natal farmer called Pete Kean came onto our show with a warning that nobody wanted to hear. His analogy was simple. If your house is on fire, the water's right there, but the law says you have to wait for the state before you're allowed to turn on the tap. He said that was where the farmers of the country were. And as a former neighbor of his in the Moy River district, he didn't really know of anybody else to turn to. So he called me up, and the next thing we had an interview. Foot and mouth disease, he said, was tearing through his herd. Even at that time, it was 100% infected. And he said the government's response was, well, where it did respond, had a 0% chance of working. 6 months on, i.e. today, a lot has changed. The High Court has struck down the law that stopped farmers vaccinating their own animals. The minister who defended that law, John Steenhuisen, has been removed. He's blaming an undercurrent campaign for his exit, but the farmers say it's because he failed to do his duty. Philly Okamp, a farmer before he entered politics, is now in the job, and certainly the agricultural sector feels a lot more comfortable about him being there. But the fire that Pete Keane warned us about in January is still burning. So I asked him back to find out what 6 months of being right actually cost him and whether he's got any more hope now than he did back in January. Pete Keane joins me now. I guess you approached me, Pete, because we used to be neighbors in the Moy River district when I farmed for a brief period, living your precarious lifestyle. As I realized, farming is certainly a way, as they say, to take a big fortune and make it a small one. But you've been a successful farmer for a long, long time. Why though were you feeling so frustrated in January?
Yeah, look, good morning to you and the viewers. Yeah, indeed. I think the main reason behind the why we were feeling in that space was because we felt that there was a disconnect, and we knew what the problem was. And in February last year, 2025, so I got involved in this because I went to a presentation at a conference, and where representatives of the foot and mouth vaccine and industry as a whole were there pushing certain things and about vaccines, and I 5 minutes in the meeting I ended up walking out because I understood quite clearly that those people that came to present on foot and mouth control were unenlightened and had the facts wrong. Yeah, so I did walk back into that meeting at the end, but anyway, it turned out that my assumption was quite right. And I wrote a letter to the powers that be, Steenhuisen being one of them, or Minister Steenhuisen, and in mid-June last year, with a 7-point plan, telling him that his plan that he's been exercising to control the disease. And I worded it quite clearly to say that he has a 0% chance of success in controlling the foot and mouth disease with the current actions of his department.
Clearly, that was was very prescient at the time. But you have now, brought out into the public domain everything that foot and mouth disease is about. When we spoke in January, nobody was really paying attention to it, apart from BizNews. Certainly, I remember talking to Theo de Jager in November last year, and he was frustrated that no one was talking about it. But for you personally, you're a big farmer. You've got a lot of cattle. You said to me at the time in January that 100% of your herd were infected. What does it cost you personally, that inability to being allowed to even vaccinate them because of state controls?
So that's a question I can't answer yet because it's a long-term uh, equation, that, Alec. So, and put into perspective. So, and I did get this message through to the powers that be to say it can be as simple as one bull lying in a corner. And for those farmers that run 100 bulls, times about 25 or 30 cows per bull, and you work out how many cows they got, that bull sitting in the corner means those cows are not, that bull's got a headache. Those cows are not impregnated. So a bull that was mating, supposed to be mating cows in January, some people got the disease out of bulling season, some got inbreeding season, but on the whole, it's had an impact, and particularly for those that lined up, depending on what infection they had when.
Yeah, there's a similar thing with the milk industry as well. Dairy, we know all about that. We've seen those pictures. They're quite graphic at times, and that is a big impact too. So it's been a big cost. But the thing I'd like you to just apply your mind to is the response, FMD response, the letter that Andrew Morphy sent to the agriculture minister, which was then passed around the department for amusement. It was leaked through to the media, to the public, and it's had, certainly what I've seen is the response has been pretty hectic against Steenhuisen. That's on social media. But what on the ground, how did farmers feel about their concerns being treated in this way?
And look, I think this is probably in my interpretation where we seeing the results of can I call it a disconnect or unreachableness in terms of those that should be controlling our livestock and our livelihoods and our welfare of our animals and the pain and suffering that they incurred, and the ongoing and the next 5 or 6 or 7 years of cash flow problems that farmers are going to see. So we couldn't connect with them, and I think that's the frustration that people turned to social media. So FMD response, as you were talking about, I'm not a participant in it, and I think everybody does things for a reason to get a positive outcome. And people typically turn to that kind of action because they feel that they're not being heard or not being engaged. So from the outset, I think I want to make it quite clear in my thing. Our entire focus is on our animals' welfare and on our business well-being or integrity of our businesses. So in no way are we politically motivated to talk about it or to line somebody up from a political point of view.
In Steenhuisen's interview, he said that he inherited this problem and that he'd been applying his mind to it or dealing with it from the moment that he became the Minister of Agriculture. Well, that was a long time before January this year. And it appears from what you're saying that your experience as a farmer was very different. But you also wrote a piece for us in January where you said that this advisory board was an echo chamber, the advisory board that Steenhuisen put around him, as you say, put people around you who can show you how to do things right. Has anything changed there? Has it got any better?
So, like, I think I must qualify that and divide this into two things. And it might sound strange what I'm saying, but I did highlight that the advisory boards that he's using or used or engaged, I felt that they were an echo chamber because information tends to go around in a circle. And you need individuals who are on the ground looking at results and who are accustomed to dealing with these things in different domains, different jurisdictions, and different geographical things. You need those people to come in to add new insight. But the same guys that have been involved in advising for 4 or 5 years, well, if you get them to advise through a crisis, you're going to get the same advice and the same results.
I would wonder, though, because the whole thrust of what Steenhuisen's argument is at the moment was that there was an undercurrent there was this campaign, Tony Leon and AfriMaga, as he calls it. You're clearly not a member of AfriMaga, but they were trying, the Afrikaners, in other words, were trying to get rid of him. And some of them were racists and so forth. And I don't know. There was, however, a go-between, a guy called Willie Oukamp, who's now, Theo de Jager certainly said that Willie Oukamp was the go-between when farmers couldn't get to Steenhuisen. Do you know Willie at all now that he's agriculture minister? It's quite an important question.
So the crux of it was our animals were dying, our animals were getting sick, our businesses were compromised. So we had to find a way to say, this has got to be dealt with. And the way it was dealt with wasn't helping those animals on the ground. And if you're spending time in your kraal and looking after your animals, and generally it takes a lot of time doing that. So you need to focus on that. But every time you look at it, as I explained with the needle and the syringe, every time you look at a solution, it leads you back to a politician. So we had corresponded with people that were getting the message through to the minister and in various different places. And we had to use some social media to do so. And there are many cartoons and depicting as to what, with articles, what needed to be done or what was happening. But yeah, there was, even with the meetings when the minister came down, he specifically stated he didn't want so-and-so in a meeting because they would be too controversial. But what he should have said, look, I'll engage with you guys. And I think this is where we would have had progress. So it's important, this interview, that it doesn't come across after the fact as complaining. That's the first one. And secondly, that we're going after someone because we feel that we want to now gun for him. So that's not the case at all. We want to now change the focus and say, well, from here on forward, we need compensation for these mistakes that have been made, because that runs into millions and millions in per farmer and billions in the economy in a long term. And as I said before, I think we sent some stuff out on social media last year in 2025 to say it's no longer a foot and mouth issue. This is now becoming a national matter.
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see how the government treats that intention, because they got a hiding. Steenhuisen did anyway in the High Court when he was trying to block the distribution of vaccines. The High Court then insisted or ruled that farmers could go ahead and vaccinate their own animals, which was really something that you were talking about right from the outset. It's something that the country as a whole is going to pay dearly for those mistakes, because it appears as though the court, certainly justice, is blind when it comes to supporting the politicians in this case. And unfortunately, we taxpayers are going to end up having to cough in, or at least to compensate the farmers who have been really given a hard time as a result of some really dumb decisions. But with Willie Okamp as the new minister, as a farmer himself, do you have any more hope? Do you have hope that perhaps it could be handled differently, or are we just going from one politician to another?
Look, as I said in my previous thought, that from now on, what happens from now on forwards is a completely different response and action needed compared to what was needed from 2 weeks backwards. So I think already that has already been catered for on a planned long-term thing, that process has started. I mean, the vaccine started thing. I've heard today that there are a few private guys that have now got all their paperwork pretty much done, and the vaccines are starting to become available, both from the state and others. Whether that turns out to be the case or not, I'm not sure. But nevertheless, I think that fit for purpose now is one thing, and it's completely different to up until 10 days ago backwards prior to that. So you asking if Willie Okamp will do a better job? I think the biggest thing is, you can't be disconnected from farmers on the ground, and that, and without being, one doesn't want to say arrogant about it, that farmers run businesses, and that politicians need to assist them with problems, and boards in farmers' areas and farmers' workspaces are representative, and they're useful. So, but it goes further than that. That there are a lot of things that need to be revamped, and we're talking about not just the Department of Agriculture. We're talking about water and dams and irrigation and a whole lot of different factors that need to be looked at in agriculture that have just evolved over time, and we've accepted that it's a top-down approach where you're told what you can do, what you can't do.
We've certainly had an experience of that, and let's hope that a real crisis is not wasted. It's some of the smart people say, never let a good crisis go to waste, and hopefully this has certainly been a crisis. You say it's like the Veld fires now burnt everything, but hopefully there will be lessons learned. Pete Kean is an independent farmer from KZN. And again, thank you for ringing that alarm bell as you did, as loudly as you did in January, and for talking to us again today. What strikes me listening to Pete Kean is that he never once asked for a bailout. He asked to be allowed to treat his own animals and just to be listened to by the people whose job it is to listen. They're there with taxpayer money, after all. Instead, he got an advisory board that he calls an echo chamber, a minister who kept the controversial voices, in other words, those that disagreed with him, out of the room, and a court case that had to be done to overrule government before farmers could even reach for a needle and a syringe. Pete's polite about it, too polite probably, but do the maths that he laid out. A bull sitting sick in a corner instead of covering 30 cows, a calving rate crashing from 90% to 30% if you're lucky, and you're looking at an impact on this country's beef and dairy supply that runs clean through to 2032. That's not a farming story. That's a food price story, and eventually a taxpayer story, because Pete's right. When the courts rule the state was wrong, it's the public purse that's going to end up paying the compensation to those who've been damaged. And boy, have the farmers been damaged in this one. A quick reminder of what we've covered today. Johan Rupert has cashed out of Reinet's 2 legacy holdings and is sitting on €5.5 billion in his war chest. That's over 100 billion rand. And a fattened dividend was given to shareholders today. South Africa's ward by-election data shows the DA is ahead of the ANC nationally, but it landed in the same week that Tony Leon and John Steenhuisen went to war over Resolve Communications. And Business Unity South Africa has walked away from the UIF at NEDLAC after 6 years of being ignored, demanding that the fund be placed under administration. Before we sign off, a quick detour to the very latest in the world, especially beyond our borders. Bloomberg's News Now wrap flags that the US labor market is the story to watch this week. June's job report, and that impacts stock markets all over the world, starting in America and here too, goes public tomorrow, and it's landing right into the new Fed chair, Kevin Warsh's inbox right now. Warsh has made it clear that he wants inflation back at 2%, full stop, no matter who's hoping otherwise, i.e. or aka Donald Trump. So what's in that job report will be very important.
News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow.
Karen, we begin with the latest on peace talks with Iran. President Trump is hailing progress in indirect discussions as both countries look to move past last week's tit-for-tat strikes. The president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and envoy Steve Witkoff are in Qatar for technical discussions. President Trump says he's aiming for lasting peace.
The denuclearization of Iran is moving along well. They've had very good meetings, and we'll see. We hit them very hard for 3 nights, as you know, but we're getting along very well.
President Trump isn't specifying what, if any, breakthroughs have been made. Vice President J.D. Vance says technical talks carried out by lower-level negotiators are continuing.
Meanwhile, Nathan, oil falling for a third straight day. As flows through the Strait of Hormuz climb, checking prices right now, West Texas Intermediate is down more than 1% at $67.84 a barrel. Brent is also down about 1% at $70.81. And President Trump is touting that as well.
Those boats are coming out of the Hormuz Strait. They're coming out by numbers that nobody ever saw. We're setting records, actually. The oil is dropping. We have some great oilmen here. I don't know if they're happy or sad. I don't give a damn if they're happy or sad. I want the prices to go down, and the oil is dropping like nobody thought possible.
President Trump made those remarks in North Dakota following his tour of the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library. Oil stockpiles in the U.S. have fallen to their lowest level since March of last year. Inventories outside strategic reserves are around 1.2 billion barrels after 12 straight weeks of declines.
Well, Karen, the other major war overseas appears to be ramping up. Ukrainian officials say Russia carried out one of its most intense drone and missile strikes on Kyiv this year, killing at least 13 people and injuring dozens. The country's foreign minister is calling for more air defense support from allies, calling the attacks, quote, grave war crimes. Meanwhile, Russia is indicating Ukraine may have used a ballistic missile in combat against it for the first time. The Kremlin says its air defenses shot that missile down.
All right, let's stick with geopolitics, Nathan. The U.S. is suggesting giving greater benefits to NATO countries that spend more on defense. U.S. Ambassador to NATO, Matthew Whitaker, raised the prospect of a 2-tier alliance in an interview with Fox News.
You know, we are going to be in Ankara, and we're going to have the first report card. We're going to demonstrate that our allies are stepping up, that they've spent in the first year since the Hague Defense Commitment over $100 billion on hard defense and capabilities, and a commitment to increasing that and ultimately equalizing with the United States. It's significant, and it's only because of President Trump.
U.S. NATO Ambassador Matthew Whitaker's remarks come ahead of a NATO summit in Turkey next week. President Trump is scheduled to attend. Germany's foreign minister is already rejecting Whitaker's proposal. He tells the German magazine Der Spiegel, quote, NATO is not about blind obedience.
Karen, the Securities and Exchange Commission is looking into claims from Susquehanna International Group that unknown insider traders made $100 million on options bets ahead of a Chinese regulatory crackdown. The quant quant trading firm went public with its claims in a lawsuit this week. It says it lost more than $70 million on most of the alleged trades. A federal judge granted Susquehanna's request for an order freezing accounts at Interactive Brokers, as well as platforms at Futu and Up FinTech Holdings. In the interest of transparency, we should note that Interactive Brokers advertises on Bloomberg Radio.
Let's turn to the economy now, Nathan, and a key piece of data ahead of the July 4th holiday. We get the June jobs report this morning, and Bloomberg's Michael McKee joins us with the preview.
The holiday-shortened week means June jobs are reported a day early this month, and traders won't have as much time to guess what the data mean for the Fed. Recent hiring has been strong and the unemployment rate stable. Most Fed officials, including new Chairman Kevin Warsh, have said they're not worried about the labor market sending any signals about a slowdown in the economy. Their main concern at the moment is inflation, which puts more emphasis on any change in average hourly earnings. They have been falling, but if hiring is picking up, that could reverse, raising fears the Fed will be raising interest rates. Michael McKee, Bloomberg Radio.
My view, there's a thread from Washington to Warsaw to the Moy River Valley. Whether it's a new Fed chair drawing a hard line on inflation or a farmer drawing a hard line on being ignored, the pattern's the same. The people with power get away with not listening for exactly as long as no one makes them pay for it. Rupert made his patience pay. Pete Kean has made government's impatience with him costly. Eventually, they might have to pay, or we as taxpayers, a heck of a lot more than anyone's even thinking of. Boosters betting the same will happen at the Unemployment Insurance Fund. Keep an eye on all three. That's the BizNews Edge for today. Thank you for spending part of your day with us. For the full story on everything we've covered, and for that interview that I told you about with Pete Keane, head over to biznews.com. Until the next time, stay informed. Cheerio.
Healthcare matters, but what matters most?
Having cover for the people who keep this business going.
Bonitas is there for you when it counts. Bonitas, medical aid for South Africa. Visit bonitas.co.za and find your plan.
In uncertain times, good information is priceless. The BizNews Conference is heading back to the Drakensberg. Join me, Alec Hogg, from the 11th to the 14th of August for BNC 9, Champagne Sports Resort, where it all began and where our community gathers for honest conversations, smart investing insights, and direct access to some of South Africa's sharpest minds. Come and rub shoulders with the best we've got. 28 keynote speakers, 3 days. Seats are available now. Book your seat by clicking the link in the description. Start your day a step ahead. BizNews Insider. It delivers the business stories that matter every morning straight to your inbox. Sharp, fast, and free. Subscribe now.